Welcome to the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit. These weekly podcasts feature expository messages delivered to edify the soul. Now let's join Pastor Dave as he presents this week's message. If you have your Bible with you today, I want you to turn with me to 2 Samuel chapter 19. 2 Samuel chapter 19. And in chapter 19 is a rather lengthy chapter. We're going to be looking at beginning in verse 31 down through, I think it's 39, 40. 31 through 40 today. So for Father's Day, I wanted to bring you a message about a man in the Bible that was strong, unique, something that would really speak to the men of the church. So this is for the fathers, but it's also for all the men, whether you're a father or not. 7 lessons of Barzillai. A fellow by the name of Barzillai. He doesn't get a lot of airplay, but he was a very important person in the life of David during a very difficult time in David's life. So why don't we read 2 Samuel chapter 19. We'll begin in verse 31. And Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rogelim and went over Jordan with the king to conduct him over Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, even 80 years old, and he had provided the king of sustenance while he lay at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. And the king said unto Barzillai, Come thou over with me, and I will feed thee with me in Jerusalem. And Barzillai said unto the king, How long have I to live, that I should go up with the king unto Jerusalem? I am this day 80 years old, and can I discern between good and evil? Can thy servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any more the voice of singing men and singing women? Wherefore then should thy servant be yet a burden unto my lord the king? Thy servant will go a little way over Jordan with the king, and why should the king recompense me with such a reward? Let thy servant, I pray thee, turn back again, that I may die in mine own city, and be buried by the grave of my father and my mother. And behold, thy servant Chimham, let him go over with my lord the king, and do to him what shall seem good unto thee. The king answered, Chimham shall go over with me, and I will do to him that which shall seem good unto thee. And whatsoever thou shalt require of me, that will I do for thee. And all the people went over Jordan. And when the king was come over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him. And he returned unto his own place. Then the king went on to Gilgal with Chimham, went on with him, and all the people of Judah conducted the king, and also half of the people of Israel. 7 lessons of Barzillai. This comes at a very difficult and dark time for David. David is returning from the trouble that was caused by his son Absalom. So Absalom had rebelled against his own father, had taken the throne in Jerusalem, and had been anointed king in Hebron. So both the people of Judah and all the people of Israel had basically rebelled against King David. There was just a few, those that were loyal to David, that went with him. So everybody's against him. David's had to run off. He went across the Jordan to a place called Mahanaim. I'm going to say it right yet. And that's a very important place because that's the place where kings were anointed in ancient Israel. So it's a very important place. It means the camp. It's the war camp. The word means the war camps. It's the place where the angels of God were when Jacob came down from his uncle's house. That's where he saw them there, and that's where it gets its name. So this is that place. David goes there. It's a fenced city. It's got walls and gates and so forth. And while he's there, he meets this fellow by the name of Barzillai. And we'll talk a little bit more about that situation in a moment. But now what we have here in chapter 19 is Absalom's dead, the rebellion's over. Israel and Judah have now said, yes, King David, come back. We want you to be our king. And so he's coming to the Jordan, He's going to cross over the Jordan, and this fellow, Barzillai, is with him. The very first thing we're told about Barzillai is he was a very aged man. A very aged man. So for this time in the life of Israel, this is around 1020 something BC. 80 years old was considered very aged. Lois Lunsford and Ruby Cecil laugh at that, right? Very aged. They don't know what they're talking about, do they? No, they don't. Yeah. So, for us, 80 years old is old, I suppose, but it's not something that we would say, wow, that's, they've made it to an old age. Well, in David's time, this was an old age. This, 80 years old was something to be said about. So the very first thing that we know about him is that he's an old man here. He's come to the end of his life. And it's really kind of a shame because I would like to have known Barzillai before this. I would like to have known his story, his children and how he raised them and what he did. And the city of Rogelim, we don't know anything about that city in Gilead. But it's there somewhere, or was. And so we don't know a whole lot about his background. And he comes into the picture now as an old man of 80 years. He knows he doesn't have very long to live. So the first thing that we see about him is that he represents a condition of time. A condition of time. Know this, everyone here, men and women alike, we have this much time, don't we? I mean, I can represent my lifespan with my two fingers. I started here. I'm going to end here sometime. And I'm somewhere in the middle right now. Or maybe I'm closer. I don't know where I am. But I know that I have a beginning and I have an ending. So my life has boundaries. And think about it, 80 years. He's an old man in our story, but how many years ago was that now? And how many Barzillais have come and gone since then? There is only so many days to a life. And the Bible makes it very clear that it's like a vapor. Men, we need to understand that we have only so much time. And I think this is such a good lesson for men because we all think, every man in here, I just about guarantee you, the last one, thinks that you got forever. Don't you? We all do. I'm not going to end. What are you talking about? I'm just beginning, right? We need to think about the fact that there is coming an end. What are we doing with this little piece of property, this little real estate in the time scheme? What are we doing with the thing that we call our life? What's it look like? We come to the end of Barzillai's life and we take just a quick look at him, and we're going to find out something about him, what he's done with his life. We need to consider closely what it is we're doing with our life. So the very first thing about Barzillai is he's an old man. We have the condition of time applied here. Secondly, verse 32 says that he was a great man. Notice there it says, and he had provided the king of sustenance while he lay at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. He was a very great man. This is the condition of industry. We don't know how he did it, if he did it through agriculture, if he did it through manufacturing, if he did it through merchants' work. We don't know what he did. But he did something, and he became great, that is, of substance. If you take your Bible and you just turn back a couple of chapters to chapter 17, you'll find the story of when David came to Mahanaim. This is in verse 27 of chapter 17. And it came to pass when David was come to Mahanaim that Shobi the son of Nahash of Rabbah and the children of Ammon, and Machir the son of Amiel of Lodabar, and Barzillai the Gileadite of Rogelim brought beds and basins and earthen vessels and wheat and barley and flour and parched corn and beans and lentils and parched pulse and honey and butter and sheep and cheese of kine for David and for the people that were with him to eat. For they said, the people is hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. Do you see that huge list of things that they gave? I mean, I'm reading verse 28, and I get to the end of verse 28, and I think, okay, the list's over, and then it just keeps going on. And honey, and butter, and sheep, and cheese for David and for the people. But notice, it's not just like they brought him a McDonald's sack lunch here, right? No, notice, the very first thing in the list is they brought beds. They brought furniture to the city so the people could have a place to sleep, and basins, and earthen vessels. They brought all the things that they were going to have while they were camping out in this place there that I can't pronounce. Beds, basins, earthenware. Now, that's one thing. So they have the physical stuff that they need. Now they fill the physical stuff with the other essentials. Notice, wheat, barley, flour, parched corn, beans, lentils, parched pulse. I am telling you what, they didn't forget a thing. This is stock in the pantry. This is overflowing the pantry. Not only that, but then they have all of the stuff that is perishable. Honey, butter, sheep, cheese for David and the people. So they've got meat, they've got grains, they've got dairy product. They've got all of this. And these three men bring all of it. Now, can you imagine the undertaking that was? Like I told you a minute ago, we went to move Adam and Christina. And moving, even for a couple, Adam and Christina have been married only a few years, 5 years. They just, they had one U-Haul truck. It would take Denise and I 15 U-Haul trucks to move, right? But still, to move furniture, whether you've got it in one U-Haul truck or 25, that's a big deal. You've got to have something to haul the furniture in. And all this food stuff, you've got to have something to haul that in. So they had a train of supply carts that came from their places to this city to supply David and all his people. So I say all that, and we go through that list just to illustrate the greatness of this man Barzillai. How did he get great? Industry. He worked. You don't get great by not working, do you? Oh, you can inherit your riches, but I guarantee you this man didn't inherit his riches. He had created something for himself and for his family. And I say this is the second condition or the second thing that we learn about Barzillai. Number one is he's under the same condition of time that we are. Number two, he illustrates for us what it means to be great. And that is every single man in here has this burning in him to be industrious. We want to produce, men. That's just how God has tuned us. We want to be creators of wealth. Why? Because we have a family to care for. We have a house to take care of. We have a name that we want to promote, right? It's just something that God has given every man. I dare say a man is not healthy if he is not in some way producing. You just don't sit around and allow somebody else to take care of you unless you just can't. But every one of us as a man feels the need to produce. And that's why this man is great. And whether you produce a lot or whether you produce a little, there is certain happiness and satisfaction in doing that. And that's one thing that we have that is illustrated by the life of this fellow Barzillai, this condition of industry. So he's a great man. He provided for the king, and we've already gone over the list there in 2 Samuel chapter 17. All the stuff, the beds, the basins, the earthen vessels, the wheat, the barley, the flour, the parched corn, the beans, the lentils, the pulse, the honey, the butter, the sheep, the cheese, all of it for David and for the people. But notice what it says there. All of that list of all that stuff, which illustrates his greatness, also illustrates the third thing here about Barzillai, and that is his generosity. Notice, if you still have your thumb over there in 2 Samuel 17, it says, when it comes to the end of the list there in verse 29, it says, for David and for the people that were with him. He didn't know all those people. He knew the king. He knew who the king was. But his generosity just overflows here. You can be a man that is bound by time, and you can be a man that is industrious in the time that you have. That does not mean that you're going to be a generous man. Because there are plenty of industrious men in this life who never have given a nickel to anything other than their own cause. Barzillai is not that kind of guy. He illustrates for us what it means to be generous. He just gives. And he doesn't just give a little bit. He doesn't say, oh, yeah, I'll pitch in. Oh, no, he doesn't pitch in. He pours on, right? He pours out. Beds. That just amazes me. Beds and basins and earthen vessels. I mean, he probably went around his house and said, yeah, we'll take that, we'll take that, we'll take that. We'll go out and buy some of that. He's given stuff that belongs to him because he's going to bless his king. It's beautiful. This here is the condition of content, or this is the condition of generosity. So this man shows us, men, that to be a man means to, or maybe I should frame it this way, to be a Christian man means to be a generous man. The fourth condition, the fourth lesson of Barzillai is that he refuses the king's gift. We have the condition of contentment here. Notice verse 33. And the king said unto Barzillai, come thou over with me, and I will feed thee with me in Jerusalem. Now, we already know how this works because we've seen it in the story of Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was one of Saul's children. It was Jonathan's boy. And David had shown him great favor and had brought him into the city, and he was living in David's house. He was eating at David's table. He had all the lands of Jonathan restored to him. He had people working for him. All of that by the mercy and grace of David shown him in that life. So we know that David had brought people in and blessed them to become a part of his court. That's what he wants Barzillai to be. He says, why don't you come up to Jerusalem with me? You can stay there in Jerusalem, and you can be a part of my court. And what does Barzillai say about that? Verse 34 and 35. Let me find my place here again. Here. Barzillai said unto him, how long have I to live that I should go up with the king into Jerusalem? I am this day 80 years old, and can I discern between good and evil? Can thy servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any more the voice of singing men and singing women? Wherefore then should thy servant yet be a burden, notice that word burden, unto my lord the king? Has Barzillai been a burden? No. What has Barzillai been? A blessing. And yet he says, why should I go with you and be a burden on you? I'm old, I'm getting feeble, I can't hear, I can't really taste anything. I come to your court, and what do you do in court? You eat, you drink, you hear people sing. I can't do any of that. So why do you want me to come and be a burden to you? He's not been a burden to David. David wants to bless this guy because he overwhelmingly blessed the king. So what we see here is that there's a condition here of contentment in his life. And I think this is a place, this number 4 is a place where a lot of men never arrive at. We're never content with where we are and what we have. We always want more. There's always more. There's always another pasture to take. There's always another field to plow. There's always more to do, to expand, to be greater, because I just have this need inside me that's just never fulfilled, but not Barzillai. He was content with what he had. I'm 80 years old. I've got all I need. Why should I go with you and be a burden to you? See, he has this sense of contentment inside him. And ladies and gentlemen, the Bible is very, very clear about this. Paul writes in Philippians chapter 4, he says, not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I think that Barzillai could have been a man of much less means and still been content, because his contentment wasn't found in his stuff. If his contentment was found in his stuff, he would not have been a generous man. Because when you find contentment in your stuff, then you'll never give your stuff away. And guess what? You will never find contentment in your stuff. It always takes more stuff. There's never enough money. There's never enough stuff. There's never enough of any material thing in this life to make us content. The only thing that can make a man content is the Lord Jesus in his heart. That's it. And I think this is what this man has. He has a faith that grounds him. He gives generously, and he doesn't need it. Why does he need it? Somebody else needs it, so let me share it. That's Barzillai. So, he's a man that is bounded by time, a man that is driven by industry, a man that has great generosity, and a man that demonstrates wonderful contentment. Number 5, he conducts the king over Jordan. There in verse 36, the end of his speech, he says, "Why should I be a burden unto the Lord my king?" Of course, I'm sure David's thinking, a burden? Buddy, you've been my blessing. Verse 36, he says, "Thy servant will go a little way over Jordan with the king. And why should the king recompense me with such a reward?" See, Barzillai is showing us that not only is this kind of man, not only is he a generous man, not only is he a content man, but he's a man who's gracious. To illustrate this, let me just ask the question. Did Barzillai need to go over the Jordan with David? Did he need to come down to Jordan with David? No. Where's Machir? He's not there. Where's, what was the other fellow's name? From Rabbah. Oh, what was his name? Nahash. Shobi, son of Nahash of Rabbah. Where's he? He's not there. But they did the same thing. They gave generously, poured out abundantly into David's life, but they didn't come down to Jordan. Well, here comes Barzillai. And he of the three is the oldest. He of the three has an excuse. He's got an excuse. He doesn't have to go. But he does, because he wants to show graciousness to this king. He wants to love him. He doesn't want him just to get the gift. No, he wants to show him this love and this mutual fraternity that he feels with his king. And he says, "I'll just go over a little ways with you, just to make sure you get over, and I'm going to send you on your way." Now, this is an 80-year-old subject speaking to the king. He says, "I'm just going to go over with you just a little ways, just to make sure you get over on good ground." Beautiful. Condescending, in a sense, to this king. He doesn't have to. He could have stayed in Rogelim. A rich man in Rogelim and done whatever he wanted to do. But no, he comes out and he shows love and service to his king. Number 6. And I love this one. I'll just tell you, this may be one of my favorite ones. I guess it's verse 36. Verse 37. "Let thy servant, I pray thee, turn back again, that I may die in mine own city, and be buried by the grave of my father and of my mother. But behold thy servant Chimham, let him go over with my lord the king, and do to him what shall seem good unto thee." So he gives his son opportunity. This is a condition of selflessness. He doesn't try to advance himself. He doesn't try to advance all the industries of Barzillai and all the great things that he's done. He doesn't ask for any favors from the king. He doesn't ask for any kind of political favor, or any monetary favor, or any market favor from the king. He just says, "Here's my son. You can take him if you want." And so he advances his own son in his place. You might say to me, "Well, Pastor, that's kind of normal, isn't it?" Well, You know what? I've seen a lot of fathers compete with their sons in this life. I've seen a lot of that. This is not the case here. Chimham's not competing, or Barzillai's not competing with Chimham. Barzillai says, here's my son, take him. Take him to your court. Show favor to him. And notice what he says to the king. He says, do to him what shall seem good to thee. So whatever it is you want to do it to him. Let him have the favor. Let him have the opportunity. You know, there comes a point in every man's life when we need to be passing the batons. You know? When we need to be advancing our sons and our daughters. When we need to say, my day's over. You know, I'm way down the track now. You know, I've had my opportunities. Now it's time for my children to have theirs. Or whoever it might be. It may not be our children. It may be some young man, some young woman that you know that needs opportunity. And you're the guy or the gal to step in and give them opportunity. To open a door that they couldn't open. That's the selfishness that this fellow shows us. He advances his own son in his place. I love that. And then finally, we have the condition of humility. He received the king's deference. Notice verse 38. Verse 38, David and Barzillai are going to have an argument here. The king answered and said, Chimham shall go over with me, and I will do to him that which shall seem good unto thee. And whatsoever thou shalt require of me, that will I do for thee. And all the people went over Jordan. And when the king was come over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned unto his own place. Notice this. As I said, David and Barzillai are going to have an argument because Barzillai said, you do to him what seems good to you. And the king said to Barzillai, he will go over with me, and I will do to him that which seems good to you. So they're both of them trying to get lower than the other one, you know. Now you do it. No, you do it. You tell me what to do. No, you do what you want to do. You see, they're not trying to be the boss here. Neither one of them. This is gorgeous. He says, King, you just do what you think you need to do. And the king says, okay, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Now the king says that to him. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And I'll go you one better, he says. I'll do whatever you require of me, and that I'll do it for you. I just love this. What does the Christian have in place that's like this? I'll tell you what, when Jesus says in John chapter 14, if you shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. The King himself has said, you tell me and I'll do it. Oh, I don't know about you, but that's pretty powerful to me. And Barzillai just shows us what that's all about. He says, King, you just do whatever seems good to you. And the king says, I'll do whatever seems good to you. The condition of humility. Both of these men are just loving all over one another. Neither one of them is trying to say, well, I'm better and I'm bigger and I'm stronger and I'm smarter and I'm prettier. None of them are measuring each other. They're just saying, whatever you want, man, I'll give it to you. I'll do it for you. Just name it. Just name it. And then the very last thing, and this just sends me to the moon and back. He says, there it says in verse 39, and the king kissed Barzillai. Isn't that just beautiful? And blessed him. And he returned unto his own place. And I'm sure standing there on that plain, that Jordan plain, as you head towards Gilgal, before Barzillai turned back to go to his own place, David is laying his hands on the shoulder of that older gentleman. And he reaches in and he pulls him to him. And he kisses him on the cheek. And with his hands on his shoulders, he pronounces a blessing of the Lord. And I guarantee you that while David is doing that, he's thinking, none of this even comes close to matching the blessing that you've been to me, Barzillai. Taking care of me in my hour of need, standing for me when everyone else in Israel had backed away, providing me and my house with every single thing we needed to live comfortably while we were gone. And he kisses him. And he blesses him. This may be the hardest thing for any man to do. I know it's hard for me. And that is to receive a blessing. To humble myself enough to receive a blessing. And that's what Barzillai teaches us here. This is the condition of humility. And he has it in spades. He shows it really in his generosity. He shows it in his graciousness. He shows it in his selflessness. He shows it almost every single time we see him in this passage. We have this humility just overflowing from this man Barzillai. He didn't need to prove anything to anybody. He was just in love with being the man of God in this situation. And David kisses him and blesses him. And he received it. That is so hard for us as men to do, to receive a blessing. But do you know what? And I think this may be one of those things that keeps men from coming to Christ. They think they need to be tough or something, that they need to be strong, that they need to show that they can do it, that they can do the good works, that they can be, what needs to be done, that they can be the religious guy, or they can be the good guy, or they can be the covenant-keeping guy, or whatever. And so they won't humble themselves under the hand of God. They won't receive the kiss of the Son or his blessing. This great man, this aged man, this secure man, this generous man, this gracious man, this selfless man bowed his heart before his king and received the kiss and the blessing and turned around and went home with it. Have you, men, women, have you received the blessing? It awaits you. So, Barzillai shows us these 7 things. I say it's for fathers, more generally for the men, but I would say it's really for everybody. Let's not forget that we have the condition of time laid upon every single one of us. Let us not forget, gentlemen, that we have the condition of industry laid upon every single one of us. And let us not forget that to demonstrate our sovereign King's rule in our life, generosity, contentment, graciousness, selflessness, and humility must be a part.
Jesus will meet you.
Thanks for listening to this week's message. Please join us again next time for another installment of the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit.